A lot of questions about the parachute I'm running on my Arrma Felony. Most of it pertaining to how, what, and where can I get one. I don't sell them. I made this off of another kit that was already doing the parts that I needed. The main things that you're going to need is some kind of a basket or a bag that's going to have 4 corners with a loop on the end, and the other 3 corners have this little eyelid. You're going to need some kind of a plate or a plunger with a spring attached to it to throw the chute, and you're going to fold the chute and place it against here so that when you actually do throw the chute, it throws it out, catches the wind, good stuff happens. One of the things that I didn't realize I needed on the bag until later to make it work was a little slot right here on the top. It just goes on the back. You take your cable, your cord, whatever it is that you're going to use, you loop it in, and that's just ensuring that the action end, that when this servo pulls, it pulls the cable right here. Otherwise, it just takes up a whole lot of slop you didn't know you had. When you throw it onto the back, you're going to need a couple of different options and ways to do it. You could come up with your own, or you could do it the way that I did it. The way that I did it was I took a piece of all thread, just regular, go to Ace Hardware, pick you up a large rod, and you cut it to length. Originally, my design was to use 2 locking nuts against washers against the plate with this bolt pattern over here. The bolt pattern is specific to where the exhaust goes because that's where I was going to mount it. And the thing about it is these 2 bolts right here, there's not going to be a whole lot of pressure on it. There's just the weight of the assembly. You don't want to hook up the parachute to that. A quick side note. But the thing about these washers was they kept slipping off, so you're going to need to weld up the all thread to your plate. You actually don't need this bend in there if you want to put that bend, and you don't need this excess right here. You just need the plate with the bolt pattern for right back here where your plastic diffuser goes in the back. You're going to shove it in through that hole, and when it's in through that hole, the exhaust that it replaced becomes completely unnecessary. It was unnecessary to begin with, to be honest, but that's besides the point. You're going to take an awning ring, a 1-inch awning ring. You get it from the same place you got that little plate and the all thread. And what I did is I drilled a little hole at the bottom that matches this one. And you make sure that that all thread matches this thread pitch that's on the awning ring. I usually take this, thread it on first, because it takes a couple of different threads, and get it to the point where it just needs that extra half a turn or full turn. And when you place the bag, you do that 1 extra turn, and it's ready to go. It's out back and ready to do some work. The parachute material was very important that you select the correct one. You don't want to go with something like a rocket parachute. Originally, I thought a rocket parachute would suffice because the force that it takes to open it up is actually a back blast. And I figured if it can handle the blast, it can handle the thing. And I couldn't be further from the truth. It ended up just ejecting the chute altogether and leaving the strings every single time. So those things didn't work. But what does work is something called a drag chute. You can get these on eBay for about $4 or $5 plus shipping. I order them in packs of 3 just in case, you know, one rips or anything like that. And this one has about 50 or so passes on it. And to be honest, it couldn't work any better. They're 18 inches in diameter. I still have the other 2 because it just wasn't necessary to change out this one. And the force that this takes is what opens up the main chute. This is what they crumble up and they throw it in the air, and it opens up the main chute on a skydiving setup. So I knew it was going to be plenty strong enough to take the forces of a car moving between 80 and 150 miles an hour. And right now this one's set to go about 80 miles per hour, which is stock out of the box. But my goal is 150 miles per hour for this car on the stock Hoons, which are the tires that I'm running. So back to the chute. The chute, very easy to work with. All you have to do is get some ribbon and you tie off one end. You're gonna take the the chute comes pre-threaded. You're just going to take that, loop a piece of ribbon over at the top, and then run a line all the way down and just put bands that go over the end, the middle, and the end. And that way it just stays together. I've had this car up 80 miles an hour, and so far it hasn't pulled any threads out, which is nice. It's exactly the way that my wife sewed it. She's going to be doing the doubles parachute pretty soon so that I could try that out. Those are just two 9-inch parachutes as a side note. Just for fun, I thought I might as well do it. Of course, I'm going to do it out of the same bag. So just a quick recap. We've gone over how you're going to store it, how you're going to throw it out there, how you're going to mount it, and then these two mounting screws are, of course, your exhaust screws. But you need some way to launch it, and that way to launch it is just any kind of cable. You need it to be somewhat stiff. So a steel cable would work. However, a steel cable will start to tear the threads on this. So what I went with was actually a weed eater, basic. I paid $4 for 40 feet, and obviously you don't need 40 feet. And all you're gonna do is you're gonna cut it to length so that this just goes right into the arm of the servo that you need to buy. Any micro servo, any standard servo, any kind of servo will work. You just need it with a little arm. You put that straight through the side and you run it out the back. And the way that I ran it out the back to kind of give it a little bit more rigidity is I put this, I had my wife sew in this little loop right here specifically for the cable. So when the cable goes out, the Arrma conveniently has about a 1/2-inch gap between the body of the car and this rear diffuser. So it works really good to throw the parachute and all the cords out. But this cable needs some kind of rigidity on the end, specifically more towards the action end, and it needs some kind of rigidity from where you're pulling from, because otherwise it just makes the line taut, or it just straightens the cable out. I probably mispronounced that word. Anyways, it doesn't pull the chute. It doesn't matter. I estimate it was probably like 1 in 5 times it would actually deploy. The rest of the time it would just wiggle back and forth, and it just did nothing. And once the cable was ran through the stock, it's just a different hole over here in the stock suspension mounting location, and then added this little loop, it worked every single time. There wasn't a single time that it didn't work, so which is good. You need the line long enough and through the eyelid that jolt might wiggle it back and forth, but it won't deploy. But actually throwing the arm of the servo pulls it out and it explodes the bag, which, you know, throws the chute, etc. The way you're going to get power to it, interesting enough, on the Arrmas, they come with a 3rd channel. So you go over to your receiver box, and in the receiver, channel number 3 is the handbrake module, which doesn't come standard on the Felony. It comes standard on the Infraction, I believe. You can easily just hook up a standard cable. It's just a extension cable to go to your servo. 12 inches is too long. You're going to need somewhere around 8 to 10 if you're going to use the same location, but best to measure it with just a piece of string before you order one. And it's as simple as just plugging it in and running it out the side of the box. And then once you put your box right back together, it does 2 things that are really nice. It keeps the whole thing waterproof, which is the main thing. A lot of people like these Arrma receiver boxes for that specific reason. And the other thing is it keeps it factory reliable. So when you're going and you're using the chute over and over and over again, the really only wearable item that you're going to have is the parachute itself. Everything else will kind of just work. And like I said, I have more than 50 passes on this, and it's got little strings going, but it's really not anything serious. As for the servo, like I mentioned before, any old servo will do. I ordered the cheapest servo that I could find from Spectrum, because this all uses Spectrum electronics just to keep some kind of uniformity. On A-Main, it was, I think, $10 or $12. It's a micro servo. It doesn't take a whole lot of force to pull the cable. So that was the main thing. And it's as simple as mounting it straight to the battery box via a little Allen screw. You just use a brass punch a little dent in there, drill very shallow, make sure it's less than the size of the threads so that the threads grab onto the plastic, and you're good to go. If you have any questions about the setup or have any suggestions on things that need to be expanded upon, please leave a comment down below. Likes, shares, subscribe, that kind of stuff doesn't matter to me. This was specifically just an informational video on how to set this up for you to do it on your own. If there's anything that I forgot, like where to mount your parachute, I did forget that. You want to put it on a strong point, which is this bar is actually pretty strong and it's right in the middle. You don't want it off to the side because then it'll drag the car off to the side. So you want it right in the middle. But other than that, everything is pretty self-explanatory in it. If you have any other questions, leave a comment down below and I'll get to them one by one as best as I can and make any further clarification videos that need to happen. Thank you and have a good day.